Now live.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Josephine. Okay, so can I welcome everyone to today's meeting of Suffolk Public Sector Leaders. I'm Councillor Matthew Hicks, Leader of Suffolk County Council, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is being broadcast live and is available to watch on the County Council's website while we are in public session. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and I've got apologies from Ed Garratt, Councillor Cliff Waterman, Chris Bally, and we've got anyone else that should be on that list. I think that's it. Okay, and can I just take this opportunity to thank Councillor Neil MacDonald, who's been the previous chair, for taking the chairmanship over the last couple of years. Thank you for doing that and all that you did to move us along. Okay, we've got notes from the last public meeting held on the 25th of October. Is everyone happy that we just agree those as a true record? If anyone's against, can you just put up your hand? Otherwise, I'll take that as agreed. Okay, thank you. So the first thing is the investment proposal for community safety. I'm going to hand over to Darren Horseman, who will present the proposal for a long-term county-wide public perception survey, and hand over to you to take us through that.
Thanks, Matthew. Tim, did you want to start? And
just an introduction, and then I'll hand over to you, Darren, to go through the slide deck. So I know you had this at the planning meeting previous, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there. But I think this is something going forward that will benefit all of us, because community safety involving all councils, other organisations, and I think that will provide a really good foundation for going forward. We haven't done one of these for a long time, and I do remember, Matthew, you'll probably remember this, was it 2 or 3 years ago? I think it was probably before COVID, we were talking about doing a survey. So I think we can all use this to good effect. Obviously, it won't take place until next year, for moving forward and how we can improve our joint working, which is something we all need to do. We have a very good track record of doing that in Suffolk, better than many other areas. We've spoken with the Constabulary, obviously Rachel's here. Hello, Rachel. But I think these things will be really beneficial. One thing I just wanted to point out, whilst we're clearly very pleased that the recorded crime rate, and this is a real tribute to the work of the Constabulary, for a year now has had the 3rd lowest recorded crime rate in the country, according to the Office of National Statistics. Bearing in mind the resources that we all get or don't get from central government, that really is a great performance. But of course, recorded crime is only part of the story. There is, I've always said that, other unrecorded crime. So there is a lot to do. And before anybody gets carried away with my, I suppose, normal optimism, there are 1 or 2 areas where crime has gone up. One of them has been shoplifting or theft. But what I would like to say is all the hard work that's been done, and that's involving other agencies, the increase in Suffolk is one of the lowest in the country. So I don't want to come across as complacent. It is a serious issue, but a lot is being done on that. So I think I'll leave it at that. And Darren, I think some of you have seen the slides before, but Darren, perhaps you'd just like to take us through. Thanks.
Yeah, very happy to. So I'll just share my slide. So bear with me 1 second. Hopefully you can all see those.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, just to recap, where some of the points that Tim was saying. So, in Suffolk, we're in a really good place. We've gone from 13th to 3rd lowest crime rate in the country over the last few years. Crime is falling, and it's falling faster in Suffolk than it is elsewhere in the country, due to the significant work, not just from the police, but also from the whole community safety partnerships and the whole system in Suffolk. We've seen public confidence remain at a high level, and following the changes in the operating model at a neighbourhood policing level, we've seen a significant increase in community engagement activity from the police over the last few years too. But against this context, there are still crime types that are going up, as Tim referenced, and this is very much recorded crime, and that doesn't capture all crime. And we do know from the comprehensive spending review in the summer that the public sector generally, and policing is no different there, and local councils are absolutely part of this, are facing increasingly tight financial pressures. So this proposal is ultimately about being able to use the resources that we do have more efficiently. So it's about providing data ultimately to our community safety partnerships to enable them to use interventions which are data driven, which are targeted, and which are effective. And this is about collectively putting together a process where we can get the data to help inform some of those interventions. So I'll skip through this. I'm not planning on reading these, so reading these out verbatim, so I'll just talk about them generally. So we've referenced the really strong partnership environment in Suffolk, the excellent work done by the Safer Stronger Communities Board and the difference that's made. Some of the key programmes that we've seen over the last few years, Safer Streets, Hotspot, Policing, Clear Whole Build, they're all examples where we've seen, where we've been able to demonstrate that interventions can lead to really tangible benefits in terms of community safety. And I think Clear Whole Build is one that's obviously happening in Ipswich, but has happened across the country, in other places across the county, and that demonstrates some of the impact we can have. We know we're going to be going through some significant changes over the next few years, local government reform, devolution. We know there's changes in the ICB environment, but also police landscape reform. So we're in a period of change. So the opportunity here is really to develop a robust, statistically significant public perception survey that allows us to get more granular detail from our communities about their perceptions of community safety. This will help us break it down to sort of district level. It'll also help us identify different demographics. So is there areas of confidence lacking in certain communities or in certain demographics, and that is the thing that will help us be able to target our interventions. So the proposal is that all of this work is done through the Safer Stronger Communities Board. The idea was born from a conversation at Safer Stronger Communities about 6 months ago, and while I'm holding the pen on this and I'm the one presenting it, it is very much a proposal brought from the Safer Stronger Communities Board and designed to report back into them and for them to be very much the steering group across the county. We also want to tie in very closely to SODA. So this is about, yes, we'll use the information in its in the way we get it from a public perception perspective, but also that information will feed into the data that's available to all of us through SODA to understand our communities better. So there's wider benefits. And then at the bottom of this slide, I've just referenced a few of the things that we're all responsible for that this will help build towards. So some of the things around neighbourhood policing guarantee and its alignment there, but also helping CSPs fulfil their statutory responsibilities around consulting with the public. And I think from previous conversations, I wanted to make it clear that this isn't about replacing community engagement and all of the excellent work that's done by councils and partners locally in their communities. It's about adding that really robust set of data to help triangulate some of those conversations people are having in their community. So it's an additional support data point rather than designed to replace anything. So what would it look like? We'd be looking at about 5,000 to 6,000 interviews across the county. So we could break it down to district level. We would collect this on a rolling month. We'd look at procuring and identifying a partner to do that work for us. Over the period, as we collected more data during the year, the data would become more robust and we'd be able to get into more tangible, granular detail. So the plan is in terms of timeline. Oh, I've gone on. So the plan is in terms of timeline that we would look at procuring it before in this financial year and then running it for 2 years following that. In terms of the objectives, one of the things I've done since we discussed this in the summer is I've gone and through the Safer Stronger Communities Board, I've worked with representatives from all of the councils, community safety partnerships. We've agreed a set of objectives that we think help clarify exactly what we're trying to achieve here. We've also agreed proposed timelines, how we work together and how we could shape the data, the questions that go out to the public when we get to that point, and pending support from this group. So I won't go into too much detail on this slide. It's a bit wordy, but hopefully gives you a sense of what we're trying to achieve. So just a couple of examples of what this has looked like in other areas and what tangible difference having this data has made in other areas. So public perception surveys have been used across the country in different ways, and some of the data that's some of the activity that's led to, for example, to pull an example from Essex, they identified that people in rural communities and those over 55 had lower levels of confidence in community safety. That led to a programme of activity around libraries, but also village halls, and an increase in awareness of prevention measures that the slightly older, I was going to say elderly, but I don't think you could be classed as elderly if you're only 55 plus. So some of those prevention activities that they can take to increase their sense of safety. Equally, some of the work that identified lower levels of confidence for women and girls, that led to specific bespoke activity around different areas of towns where they've identified that those have elements where which make people feel unsafe. So it's about that, using that data to then inform the targeted activity that partners can put together. So just a few more examples, and I'm happy to go into those in more detail if that's useful after I've presented. So the work to date, we've obviously worked with all of the partners. We agreed the objectives and a proposed timeline. We've done some initial work around the costings. So the estimates are that this would cost £70,000 a year for 2 years to run the survey. The second part of this proposal is that we would identify a £100,000 intervention fund. So at the end of the first year, we'd be able to look at what the data is showing us and then use the fund to identify interventions that we can use to demonstrate if we can shift public perception amongst specific groups targeted by the data. So that fund is about being able to more directly prove the benefit of this proposal and this concept. There is obviously the wider benefit of just having this data available to all of the agencies, all of the partners involved through SODA, and the ability at an operational level to have officers or partners in councils aware of the data and being able to target their existing activity behind that. So it does have additional benefits just beyond the intervention fund. So just next steps. So pending the decision taken today, if it was approved, we've got a working group set up with representatives across the county. We would develop the procurement spec, so everybody would have a say in that, and that would go through the Safer Stronger Communities Board. We would plan to start the procurement process this side of Christmas and identify a delivery partner in January. And then February, March 2026, we'd be looking at developing the question set, which would again go through the working group and then approval through the Safer Stronger Communities group board. We would look at the survey going live after the mayoral election in May. That would start to run, and we'd start to get the first quarter results in July. That would build up and we'd get better details and data from that throughout that year. So in January, we'd start to have some really robust, good quality data, and we'd look at the intervention fund, request examples of interventions, and then through the Safer Stronger Communities Board, choose those interventions to trial, and we'd run that through to 2028 and the beginning of 2029, where we could do an evaluation, decide if it's something that has proved valuable, across Suffolk, and if it's something we want to continue with. And that is the proposal. Very, very happy to take any questions, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Tim, do you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Matthew. Just a couple of comments to add on to Darren's explanation there. I think when we look at the funding, if you look at how successful the criminal exploitation has been over the last 8 years, I mentioned that earlier about working together. But the other thing, with my, I don't know, grants and commissioning hat on, that sum of money, once the survey is done, that can be used to lever in other funding as well, match funding. We've got several examples of where that's happened. So I think if we go into it with that mind, assuming everybody does endorse it, which obviously I do, we've got examples where some funding there does attract funding from other sources, be it from health, even from some private sector ones. Ipswich Town Football Club's another one. We put some money and that's been matched by the Premier League fund for disadvantaged youngsters. And the other point, if I may just make it, Matthew, at Health and Wellbeing Board yesterday, we had a pretty good discussion, I think it was led by Suffolk, on improving housing. That wasn't the actual title, but it was something like that. And one of the things that we are really short of, for example, if you look at victims of domestic violence, particularly women and young children, the housing accommodation of them, the same when you're looking at people, inmates released from prison, housing is a big issue. And with some seed corn funding, that can attract money from elsewhere. So just want to paint the picture. It's actually a very, very broad survey, and hopefully everybody will endorse it and we can once again move forward together. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Caroline, you wish to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Matthew. As always, when surveys are conducted, it's always difficult to reach certain areas of communities, hard to reach areas. Can you reassure me how we're going to get out there and make sure we have as wide a sample of interviewees as possible? We're going to go to like church groups, for example, and reach the other faiths and other ethnic backgrounds that might not so easily be engaged with. Homeless people, you know, people that are on the street sofa surfing, and all those really challenging people that we find difficult to get hold of in order to get the data that we need from them, because some of those groups are the ones that actually need the most help, and they're the least accessible to us to get that data from, to see how we can best help them. Thank you.
Darren and I had a discussion about this earlier the week. I can absolutely reassure you it'd be a waste of time if we didn't do exactly that, Caroline, because if we're going to try and do it for the whole of, as I call it, Suffolk PLC, that's absolutely fundamental, because some of those socio-economic problems, if we don't deal with them, then we're all, I suppose, blighted, to use an agricultural phrase on that, if we don't do that. So that's very much part of it, which is why there's been consultation with SODA and others, and whoever gets, you know, the specification when it's written up, that's got to be a very, very clear part of the whole process, without a doubt.
I can explain how the sampling methodology works if that's useful, or how it may work. But
if you'd like, yeah, if you do.
Absolutely, yeah. So just absolutely, coming in behind Tim on this one. So what normally happens, or what's happened in previous examples, is that you end up with two sort of levels of surveying. So the first level will be phone interviews, for example, which would reach a large number of people. You then use your demographic data for your county, and you do a sort of a sampling methodology where you go out and reach particular groups that aren't represented strongly enough in that sampling model, and then you'd alter your the way it's represented so they have a stronger voice. And that way, when I've looked at examples throughout the country, you do get representations from different demographics. You know, you can balance some of your minority communities to make sure that they're represented. There's obviously, with this type of quantitative survey, there is a limit, and there comes a point where you need to do the direct community engagement to supplement this type of work. So what this tends to do is reach a good mix of the community and represent some of those minority groups. I can identify where more work needs to be done with specific communities. It won't necessarily address all of the problems for all of the very granular communities across the county. So absolutely, as Tim said, it's very much taken into account, and we plan to include that in the spec, but just the approach itself has its technical limitations.
You want to come back, Caroline?
Yes, please, if you don't mind. Just for example, I myself and other councillors have sat on buses, and we've just spoke to people on buses because, for example, we have bus services around here that cater for older residents, use their bus passes, they get on, that's their social event because they're going into town or whatever once a week. Those people generally don't ever come to the council to say they've got a problem. But if you sit on a bus beside somebody and just start a conversation, you then find out that there are issues like loneliness, or they're suffering from antisocial behaviour, or they're suffering from loneliness because relatives have died, or whatever. It's just a way of engaging in conversation with people that would never come to us and present as socially isolated, vulnerable, lonely, or anything else. So it's just interesting to see how you're going to engage with those types of people who don't box themselves into a victim position so they don't present. Thank you.
So I can come back on that one if that's okay, Tim Matthew. Yeah. So the methodology that's normally used is you go out and grab the communities you want to talk to so they represent, rather than expecting people to come to us. So it is very much, we wouldn't be inviting people to come in and fill in the survey on this page. We would be contacting them directly and then making sure that the people we have contacted represent are reflective of the communities we serve. So the examples I looked at elsewhere, it does include people going out face to face, not necessarily on buses, but I love the idea of that. I have to say, it's a very innovative idea. But in town centres and stuff like that, and if they identify that they have a particular problem reaching a specific community, they will try to identify ways to go to that community and talk to them. But it is structured, quantitative question sets, and while there are 3 text sections, it's probably just important to just be open about the limitations of the methodology we would use. It's not a sort of participant observation type research tool. It's very much quant survey to supplement that community engagement and that insight that you and your councillors will get from going and sitting on buses and all the other really creative, innovative community engagement that you clearly undertake. So supplementary rather than trying to do everything, because I think that that isn't a realistic prospect.
Okay, anyone else wish to come in? Otherwise, are we supportive of the 240,000 investment proposal that we've heard? Are we happy to support that? Could I just have all those who have a say just to put your thumbs up, just so we can see that? Everyone happy? Yeah, thanks. No, anyone opposed? No. Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for presenting that. And we're delighted, obviously, to support that through that vote. So thank you. Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Tim. Okay, the next item. Sorry.
No, just saying thanks a lot. Cheers.
Okay. So the next item is the investment proposal for UK Reef, which is before us, and I'm going to hand over to Helen Pluck. Helen, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just hoping somebody's going to pop the slides on screen. There we go. Thanks, Josephine. So SPSL members will hopefully recall that last year, if I could have the next slide, please, Suffolk attended the UK Reef event in Leeds for the first time as a sort of Suffolk collaborative. UK Reef is the real estate investment and infrastructure forum, and I suppose is effectively the UK's version of MIPIM, much cheaper but not always as sunny as MIPIM has been over the years. I do recall in 2024 when Ipswich was there for the first time, it was torrential rain for much of the event, but hugely successful. We had in 2025 a stand, as I say, for the whole of Suffolk, and we got over 130 people coming to the stand to talk to Suffolk about investment and development opportunities. Norfolk had a stand as well. We could almost wave to them in the exhibition hall. And in both 24 and 25, Norfolk and Suffolk Unlimited that work across both counties were also in attendance and hosted some events. So the stand approach is generally focused on promoting specific development and investment opportunities, supported by things like information packs, videos and investment websites. And it's worked very well for us, both for Ipswich's first attendance in 24 and then the Suffolk attendance in 25. So I could have the next slide. But what we saw during 2025 was that pretty much every mayor was represented at UK Reef, even those who had only been elected a couple of weeks before. And those mayoral areas tended to have something a bit better or grander, I suppose, than a stand that gives them a bit more flexibility. So they tended to have a dedicated pavilion with a programme of events that enabled them to talk much more about the region than just promoting specific development and investment opportunities. So while we were there were some conversations between Team Norfolk and Team Suffolk, and we thought that it should be possible to secure a pavilion for the new Norfolk and Suffolk Mayor for 2026. And whilst that might seem a little bit preemptive, given that the 2026 event again will happen a couple of weeks after the mayoral event, and stands and exhibition spaces and pavilions at UK Reef do actually sell out during the previous year's event, we did need to act quite quickly. So if I can move on to the next slide, we have managed to secure a Norfolk-Suffolk pavilion for next year's event. It's there with the red circle that's got the number 15 in it, and you can just see under part of that circle the word hotel. So it's right outside the only hotel that's actually on the Leeds Armouries site where the event takes place. That's right outside the Holiday Inn. It's an extremely high footfall area, which is very important. There are upwards of 15,000 delegates attending this event, so you do want to make sure that you're in a prime position for people to come in. And actually, it's a prime position that was occupied by Wilmot Dixon in 2025. And it's quite normal for people to sort of progress different sort of types of stands and activities in different years. So I don't read anything into it that Wilmot Dixon don't want this particular spot in 2026. I'm sure they've got something else planned. So if I can move on to the next slide. So the event will take place between the 19th and 21st of May. And as I say, we know that the mayoral election is expected on the 7th of May. So it is just a couple of weeks in between. That means that preparation for the 2026 event will need to be done prior to the mayor being elected, and as part of candidate information packs, we would obviously let candidates know that these dates probably need to be reserved in their diaries, so that there is, you know, that mayoral presence from Suffolk and Norfolk at UK Reef. We are proposing that we work together across Suffolk and Norfolk to prepare for the 2026 event. And obviously that would need to be linked to the other preparations for the Mayoral County Combined Authority and all things devolution. And that there be lead officers for Norfolk and lead officers for Suffolk. And it's proposed that myself and Andrew Cook from the County Council are the two Suffolk leads, because effectively we led on the Suffolk approach for last year. And that alongside preparation for the exhibition, for the events programme and so on, that we need to put together an investment prospectus focused on Norfolk and Suffolk, and that ties in with some of the other work, of course, that we're looking at in preparation for the new mayor as well, and an event programme. And we will probably need to buy in some specialist marketing support in order to be able to compete properly with the other mayoral areas that will also be in the programme for UK Reef next year. So if we can move on. The ask of SPSL today is firstly to provide funding for the costs associated with the Suffolk stand for last year. And we're able to confirm now that the outturn cost for that event was £68,000. And then to provide a forward allocation for costs for the Norfolk and Suffolk Pavilion, which we estimate to be no more than £175,000. We will share that with Norfolk and Suffolk, and we will also look for sponsorship in order to be able to reduce the overall cost. And I believe there are some Norfolk and Suffolk businesses who are interested in sponsoring either individual events that might happen in our pavilion, or the pavilion itself, or different things to help us to reduce the overall cost. And then we will bring back a update on final costs and outputs after the event, probably this time next year, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I have to say, I went there not really understanding what I was going to. When I got there, I didn't quite appreciate the scale and the amount of people that were visiting who were there to make investment and who wanted to go from stand to stand, seeing what the opportunities were. So, and I really hadn't appreciated the scale of the whole thing. So I think this is a really positive proposal. Caroline.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't go, but officers that came back from East Suffolk Council only had good things to say. But what I wanted to say was that obviously Tim Passmore and I are nominated candidates to stand for the mayoral election. And I just think that it's only right to actually say that we are two of the candidates. Tim's put his hand up, he's going to declare himself. So that's all good. But I just think just for clarity and openness, that people should be aware. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because this is something we're voting on for the mayor in their first day, but it is wider than that because it's to the benefit of our entire region as well. But thank you for that. Tim?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. And for what it's worth, not obviously declaring an interest in that, but it's clearly a competitive process, this. And I hope that people will support it, but obviously it won't be up to me to decide that. But it is about putting both counties on the map in comparison to other places, and we can't afford to fall behind. So very interesting, and there we are.
Thank you. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. I also had a brief visit to Reef last year and was astounded by the size of it, the number of people at their very busy event. I did also speak to three of the mayors. Certainly had a long chat with David Skaith, who's the mayor of North Yorkshire, and he was newly in post last year, and he said it was quite a big shock turning up a week later at Reef. But he said and emphasised, and all the mayors emphasised, about how good it was as an event for getting their message over, getting some engagement with the business community, and they're all very much in favour of it. And I'm sure that the mayor of Norfolk and Suffolk would want to go to that as well.
Thank you, Neil. John.
Yeah, it's obviously a really important event, and we must have a high profile there. And securing a pavilion, I think, is excellent for Suffolk, but also for the whole region. And the timing, 2 weeks after the mayoral election, is ideal, because next year we'll be able to go there at the pavilion with the mayor, and that's only going to be to our benefit. So I fully support this.
Thanks, John. Ian.
Thanks, Matthew. Just a bit of admin, and Helen, apologies if I missed it. So I just want to get the total sum before leaders come to decision. So 68,000 for the historic bit. Half of the 175 is 87,500. So that's 1,555,500 precisely. I just wonder whether because we're asking for a provision. Things may move up and down. Whether there was a rounder number that we actually wanted to ask leaders for today, say 160, and then clearly there's work to do. We've got a round number. If it's less than that, we get more sponsorship. Obviously, we'll keep updating numbers, but it's what number are we putting in the budget to set aside was really the question, Matthew.
So really, you think 160 covers it as the worst case?
Helen, does that feel about right?
I think rounding is always a good idea. And if members of SPSL are comfortable with that, then yes, we will keep it as low as possible whilst having a high quality output for Norfolk and Suffolk, because there's a real trade-off here, isn't there? If we want people to invest in our region, then we need to actually make sure that they are attracted to what we do. But yes, I think that 160, so that's the 68 for this year. And then that'd be 92 for the Suffolk share for next year would be great. Thank you.
Okay, and I think what would be really useful is to get a sort of report that comes back to us about the contacts we had at the last UK Reef and the inquiries and how those have followed through. Maybe a couple of case studies. It'd be really interesting to see what came out of actually being there and have some sort of evidence. That would be useful, but I think we should just move forward with this for now. But I think if we're going to go beyond those years, it'd be good to have some evidence to show what has happened and the outcomes.
Yeah, I agree, Chair. It's quite tricky to do that, however, on a short-term basis, because these are long-term contacts.
I get that, yeah.
But I'm absolutely confident, for example, that some of the contacts that Ipswich made in 2024 will come to fruition before the 26th event.
Yeah.
And it just gives you, that confidence that this stuff does make a real difference.
Yeah. Okay. So is anyone else wish to come in and comment on this? Otherwise, we'll go to a vote. Is everyone in favour of that recommendation of up to 160,000 that's agreed? That's agreed by everyone. Anyone against? No. Okay. So we're happy to support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now the next item is on NSIP support. Are we joined by Steve Palfrey?
He's just on his way, Chair. He should be joining now.
Okay. We are a bit ahead of schedule, so he wasn't expecting to be here till 11:30. Hi, Steve. Sorry, we've gone early, so we've moved through the agenda.
That's all right. Caroline had me on standby, so not a problem.
Okay, so if you can just take us through the investment proposal on the NSIP support, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. And as per your agenda, I think we were all expecting this to be a double act between myself and Chris Bally. Unfortunately, he's got a prior engagement and so has had to give his apologies for the meeting today. And so I spoke to him yesterday just to sort of confirm how best to approach it, and he suggested I produce a couple of slides, which I've done. So if you're happy, I'll share those. And just to sort of clarify, so I'm one of the two co-chairs of the county-wide SCEEB group, so Suffolk Climate Change, Energy and Environment Board, and so and Chris is the chief exec sponsor on that stream, hence the double header approach. I'll just put this into slideshow mode then. Can you just confirm you can see that okay at your end?
Yeah, that's fine, Steve.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so yeah, this is a proposal to help us to support communities across Suffolk who are impacted by NSIP proposals, so nationally significant infrastructure proposals. There's been quite a number of NSIP proposals in Suffolk. We're sometimes described as NSIP Central, particularly energy sector proposals, but also increasingly water sector as well. So things like obviously we've had the Sizewell, the biggest NSEP, but also offshore wind, interconnectors, cable routes, water pipeline routes. And fundamentally, these proposals are all linked to growth. So it's about keeping the lights on and keeping water coming out of the taps, and so they very much support growth, and we're finding, so both in terms of energy and water, there are areas of the county where new businesses are struggling to set up without, because they're unable to connect to either or both of the water or electricity network with the connections that they need for those businesses. So it's pretty fundamental stuff, and the way that the energy and water sectors approaching being able to provide that that necessary energy and water is through lots of changes to the network and so on, and new generation. So we can very much expect more, whether it's new cable routes, whether it's new solar proposals, offshore wind proposals, whether it's water pipelines, reservoirs, desalination plants. These are all the kind of infrastructure proposals that are likely to impact Suffolk going forwards. And clearly they have very local impacts and can generate a lot of community concern. And the NSIP process is quite a complex and technical one, so quite difficult for local communities to engage with, whether that's understanding the process and how to engage, understanding the opportunities for dialogue with developers and scheme proposers, the sheer volume and complexity of the information that goes into NSIP applications, and of course access to technical expertise in relation to those proposals. We've done some work already in Suffolk to help support communities. So the county councils worked closely with SALC, the Suffolk Association of Local Councils, to work up some guidance which is published to very much help and support, and individual district and borough councils, particularly at the moment in the East Suffolk area, have been engaging very heavily to support their communities as well. The proposal then today is to build on that previous work with SALC and to the request is for funding to support a dedicated resource that would support communities represented through their local councils, so the parish councils. And as this slide shows, in terms of the bullets, the kind of support that that ought to be able to provide to communities then is a better understanding of the process, the deadlines, the opportunities for dialogue, someone who can signpost and assist communities in doing that, generate a bank of knowledge and past experience from other proposals that have similar sorts of impacts that can allow communities to learn how a proposal will impact them and what sorts of issues are likely to be important in a community representation into the planning inspectorate. Support the establishment of clusters, so a number of these development proposals don't just impact one local community, it's a number of communities, so assist them to work together and to have a bit of economy of scale and a sort of joint voice, and try and address this issue of how do communities best access technical support. So develop an expert list, try and find specialists who are interested and willing to do pro bono work and make that connection to the communities that need it. So just into the detail then, the project in total has an estimated cost of 110,000. Salk have already secured a pledge of £30,000 of that, so they're seeking £80,000 from the Suffolk public sector leaders, and for that then they would deliver that support to Suffolk communities over a 3-year period. Basically starting as soon as they got the funding secured and could turn that into a post on the ground delivering that support. Thank you. Do you want me to stop sharing the slides?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so obviously this impacts areas where we see NSIPs coming in the majority, but of course we have always taken the approach at SPSL to fund things that may not impact all of us. I've got a couple of examples I've looked at. I know on the education skills and social mobility pilot, that was very focused around 3 academies in Ipswich and Lowestoft, but not elsewhere. And we've done some funding in the past for Sudbury Relief Road, and we did some funding for the National Literacy Trust with hubs in Haverhill, Lowestoft and Stowmarket. So we have done stuff that doesn't always benefit everyone directly and clearly, but obviously we take a sort of group approach across Suffolk. So Caroline, happy to bring you in.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. I have just asked Michelle on the spot, bless her, she might not be able to find it, but it would have been Steve, sorry, this isn't a criticism, but I have seen overlays of maps where you can put down, for example, the overlay of the map of the work that's happening at Sizewell, which is quite extensive, and then you can overlay that with all the other 4 NSIP projects that are happening in East Suffolk, and you get this picture of like this plate of spaghetti, which is hugely impactful if you're living in that area. At the moment, the energy projects aren't coordinating with each other, so you can have this spaghetti effect where huge areas, and if you drive down the A12 you can see the impact A12 is having on the communities there. So Michelle's just seeing if she can get that. It might not be possible to get that in the time span, I should have asked earlier, but this is hugely impactful on those communities. They're going through a lot of stuff, and it isn't just in East Suffolk. This is going to be happening across the whole of Suffolk because we are now being renamed the Energy Coast and not the Heritage Coast. We've already got the Norwich to Tilbury pylons, and we've got solar farms and all sorts of NSIPs coming up. And for those that are looking in that aren't aware of what NSIPs are, they are nationally significant infrastructure projects, and it's about offshore wind, etc., coming onshore here and then going across the country to London and other places. Making this more personal, because a lot of us have town and parish councils that are impacted by this. Town and parish councils often have 1 or 2 officers, the clerks that do all the day-to-day business. We have town and parish councils who have maybe 1, 2, 3 members of staff. They are trying to run their parish and town councils business as usual, dealing with all the stuff that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and then all of a sudden they get hit by a nationally significant infrastructure project, and they are a statutory consultee through the planning process. The district council is also a statutory consultee. We obviously are filling our bits of the paperwork and we sign off the DCOs, which can come in, and they have been coming in on a daily basis as Sizewell progresses. The DCOs, Steve can explain what a DCO is because I can't remember what the actual acronym stands for, but these are coming in on a daily basis, and I know Tom Daly, who's my portfolio holder for the nationally significant infrastructure process, is signing these things off on a daily basis, and probably Richard Rout from Suffolk County Council is doing exactly the same thing. Our town and parish council staff don't have the time nor the expertise to do the same job that our officers are doing from our councils. I have spoke to town and parish council officers who are, and I've got to say, some of them are in despair because they're trying to conduct normal business that their electorate are expecting them to conduct. And then they have all these really difficult, complicated documents coming through, which are piling up on top of them, taking up more of their time. And to be perfectly honest, they don't have the skill set to deal with these things. So I would like us to support them and help them through Sulk to take some of this weight off their shoulders so they feel that they're doing a good job for their residents and they're not letting people down. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks,
Caroline. John, over to you.
Yeah, I'd endorse pretty much everything Caroline said. There is a huge problem with this piecemeal approach, and there doesn't seem to be much of a strategic joined-up approach to all of these DCOs coming in, and the cumulative impacts are huge. Parish councils and town councils have to respond to each one. We do our best at Babergh. We have a planning officer, principal planning officer, who's dedicated to responding to NSIPs, and she helps towns and parishes as much as possible. But something like this through Sulk, I think, is going to be a great benefit. A couple of things that I think I'd like to add. It'd be interesting to see if Norfolk and Essex are doing something similar, and whether we could somehow join up with them, because certainly things like Norwich to Tilbury, it affects all three counties. And there does need to be a coordinated approach to responding to that across all three counties. And the other point I just wanted to raise is that certainly on Norwich to Tilbury, and I'm very interested in that because it goes straight through the middle of my ward, and indeed so does the Bramford to Twinstead reinforcement. So I had two pylon lines to cope with. The other thing with regard to Norwich to Tilbury, there is a very effective group that has been set up to represent the public and residents along that route. It does a lot of good work, and coordinating with them, I think, in some way would be hugely beneficial as well. But I definitely support helping Sulk with this.
And obviously Cliff Waterman isn't here today, but he's sent a message of support as well, because he's had Suffolk and all the solar farms in the west as well, putting pressure on the parish councils. Neil, over to you.
As you're aware, I mean, we don't have parishes in Ipswich, so I find this difficult to support. I'm also interested in is Sulk the best route through to support this? I mean, you all have planning departments, can they not do a bit more? And it's interesting to pick up on John's point about working with other counties as well. Surely there's some synergy we can do across the eastern region to help with this.
Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. No, I do think it's a good idea, because I do feel that well, Suffolk in particular, but the chunk, if you like, the whole of the 6 counties here, perhaps with the exception of Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire, 4 counties then. But we're doing a huge amount there for the national well-being potentially, and I'm very pleased that water resources are mentioned. But you see, whatever we do with these things are going to be controversial. The pylons, of course, that's hugely controversial. A personal view here, whilst I'm all in favour of solar farms, I really don't agree with plastering our countryside to the extent we are with these enormous developments, because we're supposed to be looking at food security, but that seems to have gone out the window. So a far better balance has got to be struck. And one thing I would say for all these nationally critical infrastructure projects, well, what do we get in return for the people in Suffolk? And you could argue that for Essex and Norfolk as well. So anything that can not delay matters, but actually give a fairer distribution. And I think supporting local parishes and smaller communities, I think is very important. Otherwise, it just rides roughshod over them and they don't get anything out of it. So I think it's a good idea to do this, personally. There you go.
Thanks. Andy, sorry to put you on the spot, but could we just have the view from Mid Suffolk, because obviously we've got a slight difference of view here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think what others have said is true for us as well. We have a number of these projects coming forward, and it does stretch the capacity of, parish councils. And I think it's really important that we try and leverage local benefit out of these big projects. And I think that would be done better if there's some kind of comprehensive support from a well-known organisation to do that. So yes, I'm in favour of this as well.
Okay, I mean, we've never taken the approach at SPSL. We normally agree to do things by consensus, and often funding doesn't benefit everyone. I mean, we can talk about the funding we put for the Sudbury Relief Road. The National Literacy Trust didn't benefit everyone equally, and in fact, the Education and Skills Mobility Project benefited Ipswich far more than other areas. So we don't normally sort of point that out. We just come together a consensus. But I would need Neil to be happy to support this, to get it through, because I have just checked that we do need all members to support the distribution of the funding in order for it to go ahead. So I will have to ask, is everyone happy to support it? If not, I'll have to ask officers to take it away. But Neil, sorry to put pressure on you, but it does come down to you if you're and how you're going to take that forward.
Let's take it away.
Okay, well, that is your prerogative, because we do have to have all leaders agree to take something forward. But we've never done it that way before, where we've said my council's not benefiting as much as another council, therefore I'm opposing it. That this is a first, but that is your prerogative. Okay, so we can't support this item, and we'll ask officers to have a look at it and see where we go. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, budget review. Hand over to Ian.
Thanks, Matthew. Leaders have got the paper. The paper records the substantive budget decisions you made at your last meeting. So that was the school's solar and climate change action fund, the Suffolk Wildlife Trust, and then the 3 years subscription for Transport East. So that left you at the start of today with a balance of £848,000 in the pot. And you've just allocated 300,000 in supporting the Community Safety Survey and the UK Reef. So we will update the budget.
That seems pretty straightforward. Thank you, Ian. Okay, and Andy, over to you. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. How will our funding going forward be affected by any kind of business rates reset from government?
We're dangerously without financial colleagues, and who knows what's the detail and the spending for. I think we're anticipating, as we usually do, that we will ask you the decision towards as we move into October about your views about pooling again, and collectively that's, I think, the easiest decision you ever get to make, because just by pooling it puts more money into the pot. So if the current arrangements for business rate pooling are still in existence, we will formally ask you that question. There is then a second question we collectively ask you as leaders about whether you wish to pool, i.e. put the money in the Suffolk Public Sector leaders' pots, or we disaggregate back to the council's budget, which is what we did this year, given the pressure on individual budgets. So if nothing changes, that's the process we'll go through, Andy, and that would have an impact on your budget moving forward, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Thanks for that, Ian. Okay, anything else anyone wishes to bring up? Otherwise, that concludes today's meeting. Thanks everyone for joining us, and see everyone soon at the next meeting.
Okay, have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.